Obi-Wan Kenobi gave the first answer to how the Force was created, and every answer that followed went deeper than the last. He told Luke Skywalker that the Force was an energy field created by all living things, one that surrounded and penetrated everything and bound the galaxy together. He said it inside his hut on Tatooine, sitting across from a boy who had never heard the word Jedi before that afternoon. It was not the whole answer, and the full history of the Force pulled it apart layer by layer. Years later on Dagobah, Yoda confirmed the same idea in plainer language, telling Luke that life creates the Force and makes it grow. Yoda called them luminous beings, not crude matter, as if the body were just the packaging. Obi-Wan had given Luke a sentence that covered everything a beginner needed to know. The Force exists, it comes from life, and a Jedi can learn to feel it. Two of the wisest Jedi in galactic history arrived at identical conclusions. And for a long time, the answer seemed settled. A biological mechanism sat below, tied to a cosmic architecture linking the living and the dead, reaching to a physical origin point at the center of the galaxy that no star chart had ever recorded. Beneath all of it sat one unrealized layer so strange that even its architect admitted most people would hate hearing it. Every Jedi who ever ignited a lightsaber drew from the energy field Obi-Wan described. And so did every Sith Lord who spent centuries trying to bend that same field towards darker ends. The wars, the prophecies, and the fallen orders all grew from the same root, and Obi-Wan named it first. His description was never wrong. The full picture, though, was larger and stranger and older than a single sentence could hold. Obi-Wan did not ask Luke to take the Force on faith. He handed him a lightsaber, told him to close his eyes, and let the Force guide a training remote's blasts away from his skin. The energy field was real enough to deflect a laser bolt, and Luke felt it work before he understood what he was feeling. In the plainest version of the answer, the Force is not a well sitting somewhere in the galaxy. Living things produce it the way a furnace produces heat, constantly and without effort, as a basic condition of being alive. Obi-Wan did not say it was given to living things or found waiting. He said they created it. Yoda arrived at the same answer on Dagobah without prompting. Wherever life fills a planet, the Force fills it too, and wherever life is gone, the Force goes quiet. On a world like Dagobah, where swamp life crawled and grew and decomposed in dense layers, the Force pressed in from every surface. On a barren asteroid with no atmosphere, the Force would be nearly silent. By Obi-Wan's account, the Force has no independent existence apart from the life producing it. The Jedi do not tap into an external power source when they lift a stone or sense a mind across a battlefield. They draw from the combined output of every living thing around them, an energy that exists only because those organisms are breathing. Both Jedi describe something happening in the present, in every cell across the galaxy, not an event from the ancient past. It is a current output that renews with every heartbeat and every breath drawn by every creature in the galaxy. Neither Jedi explain how a living cell connects to an energy field, or why a slave boy on Tatooine could hear the Force more clearly than a Grand Master with 8 centuries of training. Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan's own master, answered both questions on the day he found that boy. Qui-Gon had spent years studying a part of the Force that Obi-Wan never brought up with Luke. Microscopic organisms called midi-chlorians lived inside the cells of every living creature in the galaxy. Most Jedi treated them as a technical detail, a way to measure Force sensitivity through a blood count. But Qui-Gon understood them as the connective tissue between a living body and the Force surrounding it. After landing on Tatooine during the Naboo crisis, he encountered a slave boy named Anakin Skywalker and took a blood sample. Obi-Wan ran the count aboard their ship, and the reading came back above 20,000, higher than any Jedi the Order had ever seen. Qui-Gon told Anakin that midi-chlorians reside inside all living cells, and that every organism is a symbiont with them, 2 life forms sharing a body for mutual benefit. Without midi-chlorians, he said, life could not exist, and no being would have any knowledge of the Force. They were not the Force, they carried it cell by cell into every organism alive. The will of the Force moved through them constantly, and a quiet mind could hear it. On the same day he explained midi-chlorians, Qui-Gon raised a second, quieter theory. Anakin's mother, Shmi Skywalker, had told him there was no father. She carried the boy, gave birth, raised him, and could not explain how it happened. Qui-Gon brought that detail to the Jedi Council along with the blood work and proposed that the midi-chlorians may have conceived Anakin directly. The Council absorbed the claim without confirmation or denial, and the idea sat unresolved for years. Qui-Gon died on Naboo before he could follow either thread. Darth Maul's blade cut him down in the reactor core of the Theed Royal Palace, and the deeper questions Qui-Gon carried died with him. But during the final months of the Clone Wars, years after his death, Yoda heard Qui-Gon's voice speaking from inside the Force, and the dead master finally explained how the whole system works. Qui-Gon's voice reached Yoda during deep meditation inside the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. In the final months before the Republic fell, he spoke not as a ghost standing in the room, but as a presence woven into the Force, and he told Yoda something no living Jedi had ever heard stated so plainly. The living Force comes from every organism alive, produced constantly as a condition of existence. All of it flows into a larger reservoir called the Cosmic Force, which binds the galaxy together and answers back through the midi-chlorians. Mapped out, Qui-Gon's explanation forms a closed loop. Living things create energy that feeds into the Cosmic Force, and the Cosmic Force answers through midi-chlorians embedded in the cells of the same organisms producing the energy. Neither half works without the other, and neither half came first. Qui-Gon mentioned the will of the Force years earlier when he explained midi-chlorians to Anakin on Tatooine. Inside the two-part framework, the phrase carries a different weight. The Cosmic Force holds the energy of every organism that has ever lived and died, and it sends signals back through midi-chlorians. Whatever will the Force has, by Qui-Gon's framework, it moves on behalf of every life that ever poured energy into it. The voice Qui-Gon told Anakin to listen for is not coming from a single mind or a hidden god. It is coming from everything, filtered through a cosmic reservoir and delivered cell by cell. Qui-Gon had spent his career attuned to the first half, the living Force, the peace rooted in the present moment, and the life happening around him right now. He told Obi-Wan to stay mindful of it, to focus on the here and now rather than chasing distant prophecies. The Jedi Council favored the second half, the Cosmic Force, the bigger patterns, and longer timelines. Qui-Gon stayed close to the ground under his feet, and that closeness led him to midi-chlorians, to Anakin, and eventually to a voice that could speak from inside the Force after death. His body stopped producing the living Force at death, but his awareness persisted inside the Cosmic Force, carried by the accumulated energy of every organism that had ever lived and died. His voice did more than lay out the system. It sent Yoda to a planet at the center of the galaxy where the bridge between the living Force and the Cosmic Force had a physical anchor. The planet had no name on any chart. The surface was barren, a dead landscape of dust and rock with no visible sign of anything alive. But from deep underground, luminescent geysers shot columns of raw Force energy into the sky, visible to the naked eye. This was the Wellspring of Life, and nothing else like it existed anywhere in the known galaxy. Above the surface, islands of earth and vegetation floated in the air, dense with plant life and soaked in the Force. The connection between the energy below and the life above was so compressed that Yoda could feel every organism around him individually, each one a distinct voice in the current. Energy vented from the planet's core and fed the life floating above it, and that life poured the living Force back into the air. Every other world in the galaxy kept the two at a distance. At the Wellspring, they wrapped around each other. 5 beings made of light greeted him there, each named for a different state of mind: anger, confusion, joy, sadness, and serenity. The Jedi knew them as the Force priestesses, and they had been waiting. The 5 embodied the full emotional range of conscious life, and they tested Yoda on whether he could face the darkest corners of his own nature without looking away. The priestesses told Yoda that everything surrounding them was the birthplace of the bridge connecting the living Force and the Cosmic Force, not the Force itself. The Wellspring answered where the bridge between life and the Force was born. A different kind of answer waited in a realm called Mortis, where the Force's own nature, its division between light and dark, had taken physical form. A 2,000-year-old Jedi distress signal pulled Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka into a realm outside normal space during the Clone Wars. The landscape shifted between glances, and the sky cycled between burning sun and pitch black as if the world itself responded to whoever stood on it. A vision of Qui-Gon appeared to Obi-Wan and called Mortis, unlike any other place in existence, a conduit through which the entire force of the universe flows. 3 beings lived on Mortis. The father, the eldest, held a balance between his 2 children, the daughter who followed the light side of the force, and the son who served the dark. The daughter's presence carried warmth, the air softened around her, and the light on Mortis steadied when she was near. The son radiated the opposite, a coldness that crept into the joints and shortened the breath. The father told Anakin that only on Mortis could he keep his children in check, a family held in balance, day against night, destruction replaced by creation. He added that their physical forms were reflections of the energy surrounding them, leaving open the possibility that the 3 of them were not beings in any ordinary sense, but the Force wearing living shape. The father's health was failing, and his reason for pulling Anakin to Mortis was a test. He needed to know whether the Chosen One, a figure of Jedi prophecy, could take his place as the one holding light and dark apart. When the father died, so did the balance. The daughter gave her life, and Anakin killed the son. Mortis lost all 3 of its guardians, and the realm went silent. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka woke aboard their ship at the exact moment they had left, as if no time had passed. Mortis folded back into the Force without a trace. The 3 Jedi carried only the memory of a place where the Force had been the ground beneath their feet and the sky overhead. The Republic's war continued around them, and no record of Mortis entered the Jedi archives. A few in-universe traditions treat Mortis as the place where the Force originated, but the only description given when the Jedi arrived calls it a conduit. A conduit channels something that already exists. The daughter and the son predated the Jedi Order and the Sith, older than any civilization that claimed light or dark as its own. Light and dark lived inside the Force long before any mortal chose a side, and the Sith did not invent the dark side. A Jedi holocron recovered by Luke Skywalker on Nar Shaddaa preserved the oldest surviving account of how the Sith began. Once, the Jedi and the Sith were brothers in the Force, and the Sith chose the dark side that was already there. Yoda later told Luke on Dagobah that anger, fear, and aggression are the dark side, not a stronger power, but a quicker, easier, and more seductive path through the same energy field. The Sith who broke from the Jedi did not just embrace a different side of the Force, they also chose a different relationship with the midi-chlorians, which Qui-Gon had devoted his life to understanding. Palpatine told Anakin about a Sith Lord named Darth Plagueis during a private conversation at the galaxy's opera house on Coruscant. Plagueis had learned to influence the midi-chlorians to create life. Where Qui-Gon sat in silence and heard midi-chlorians carry the will of the Force, Plagueis forced them to submit. The Legends novel Darth Plagueis gave the Sith Lord an even sharper view. He regarded midi-chlorians as interlopers running interference for the Force, obstacles standing between a Sith and the power he wanted. He spent decades learning to control them, pushing where Qui-Gon would have listened. The deepest layer of all sits outside both canon and legends entirely, existing only as the creator's stated intent for stories that were never made. George Lucas first wrote the word wills in 1973, before Star Wars had a Death Star, a lightsaber, or a character named Skywalker. The story was originally called Journal of the Wills, and the concept predated the Force as a finished idea. In the companion book to James Cameron's story of science fiction series, Lucas described what his unproduced sequel trilogy would have explored. He called them creatures existing on a completely different level from anything in the known galaxy. The wills are the ones who actually control the universe, and they feed off the Force. Living beings, in Lucas's framework, were vehicles for the wills, vessels carrying passengers they can never see or detect. The midi-chlorians serve as the conduit, communicating with the wills, and the wills, in a general sense, are the Force. Living beings carry the entire chain inside their cells without ever knowing. Lucas acknowledged that fans would have rejected the idea, that people would have hated it the same way they hated midi-chlorians when they first appeared on screen. But he insisted the full story, from beginning to end, would have been complete. Rogue One introduced the Guardians of the Whills through two characters on Jedha, Chirrut Imwe and Baze Malbus, who guarded the Holy City and its Kyber Crystal Temple. They were a religious order, not the microscopic beings Lucas envisioned, but the name survived into canon as a faint trace of a concept that never reached the screen. Lucas's vision was never filmed, and the Whills remain outside both canon and legends. But even without the Whills, the stories that were produced left one piece of evidence worth following. A slave woman gave birth to a boy with no father on a desert world in the Outer Rim, and the Jedi who found him believed the Force had put the child there on purpose. Mace Windu connected Qui-Gon's claim about Anakin to the prophecy of the Chosen One, a figure the Jedi had long believed would bring balance to the Force. Qui-Gon was certain the Force had placed Anakin in the galaxy through the midi-chlorians, not as an accident, but as an act of will. He staked the last hours of his life on convincing the Council to train the boy. Obi-Wan carried that belief forward for decades. He held it through Anakin's fall to the dark side and through the burning of the Jedi Order. On the lava fields of Mustafar, he told Anakin he was supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. If the Force created Anakin through the midi-chlorians, the Force is not just an energy field produced by life. It placed a child into a mother's womb to serve a purpose no Jedi fully understood. The boy would grow into the most powerful Force user the galaxy had ever known, fall to the Sith, and return to the light in time to end them. The Legends novel Darth Plagueis offers a sharper version of why. In the Legends telling, Plagueis and Sidious tampered with the Force's balance so aggressively that the midi-chlorians retaliated. Anakin was not a gift from the Force, he was a correction, conceived by the midi-chlorians to destroy the two Sith Lords who tipped the scales and restore the balance they had broken. Anakin did fulfill the prophecy, though not in the way Qui-Gon or the Council expected. He spent 2 decades as Darth Vader, serving the Sith, and then turned against Palpatine aboard the second Death Star to save his son. He had destroyed the last Sith Lord and brought the balance the Jedi had waited for across 100 generations. The Force, if Qui-Gon's theory holds, created a child who would need 2 decades and a galactic war to finish the work he was born for. Whether the canon version or the Legends version is closer to the truth, both arrive at the same conclusion. The Force is not sitting still. Obi-Wan's definition, Qui-Gon's cycle, the Wellspring of Life, and Anakin's birth all bend towards the same shape. Life creates the Force, which speaks back through midi-chlorians in every living cell, and in at least one case reaches through those cells and puts a new life into the galaxy. The shape is a circle. It has never stopped moving. Quick note before you go, members get early access and a few videos that stay off the main channel. If that's interesting, the link is in the description. Otherwise, here's another video about Force techniques both Jedi and Sith banned that you might like.